What a game. Man, what a game. Jets lose to the Minnesota Vikings 27-22. I'm just going to get right to it. It sucks to lose. It really sucks to lose. But that game looked like a legit playoff game. The environment, both teams going back and forth, how it ended. Right, understanding that this Vikings team is one of the best at football, nearly perfect on the road, now a 10-win team, a 10-2 playoff team, because they did just clinch the NFC North. To see that game go back and forth like that, and understanding that the Jets made a myriad of different mistakes, whether it's an overthrow there, a really bad penalty there, a dropped pass there, like there were a lot of questionable calls, a lot of questionable coaching decisions. The Jets did not play a perfect game, by no means. Failures in the red zone, we're going to talk about all that kind of stuff, but first, I just want to start off by saying, credit the Minnesota Vikings. That is such a good football team. They've been battling, much like the New York Jets, all season, having these fourth quarter comebacks, these resilient wins where the team has wherewithal. These teams have, the Vikings specifically. When you take a look at the NFC as a conference, that's the one team that I feel like battles every single week, but every week they're victorious, right? They're coming away with W's. Doesn't matter where they're playing, it doesn't matter who they're playing against. The point is, the Jets did not play their best football. They had numerous chances to get in the end zone, again, red zone opportunities, but they fell short. But you know what? They fell short to a really good football team, one of the best teams in football. One of the best teams in football. That's not a stretch to say. Again, credit the Minnesota Vikings, credit their coaching staff. I felt like in the first half, they really knew what they were doing. They had the Jets right where they wanted them, controlling the game. Nice combination of running and passing. Not many mistakes. There was a lot of incompletions on Cousins' part, but overall, the offense was just rolling. The Jets could not get off the field on third downs in the first half. I believe the Vikings were 7 of 11 on third downs in the first half alone. I felt like that had to be cleaned up at halftime, and major adjustments needed to be made. Those adjustments were made, and the Jets were just on fire to start the second half. And I was thinking both on offense and defense. The offense was going right up the field. The defense was constantly forcing punts. The Minnesota Vikings in the second half in total had 5 punts, numerous 3-and-outs. The defense really stepped up in the second half. And again, the offense constantly getting in the red zone. Unfortunately, the Vikings defense was bending, but they weren't breaking, right? They were giving up some really big plays. Garrett Wilson specifically, they had that one big run by Bam Knight on the sidelines that I think popped off for 40 plus. The Vikings it's a good test of resiliency for the Minnesota, or a good sign of resiliency from the Minnesota Vikings. Just a hard fought game from both sides. And I know it's never ideal to lose a game, especially if the Jets are in, a tight AFC East race and a tight AFC playoff picture race. But I'm going to say this, I really was impressed with what the Jets, with what the Jets look like today. I really, really am. They had so many things working against them in the first half. And then to bounce back in the second half and make it a tight game and give themselves an opportunity late was, in my opinion, incredible. I think this is going to be one of those games where Saleh, Ulbrich, Mike LaFleur specifically, they're going to rewatch this game, whether it's tonight on the plane ride back or tomorrow, and they're going to watch that first half and say, man, we really shot ourselves in the foot. You take that with some of the bad penalties. Some I agree with, some were just egregiously bad. The loss was not on the refs, by the way. I'm not saying that, but it definitely played a factor in why the Jets looked just so stale and flat and lifeless in the first half. I really feel like if the Jets just played average football in the first half and weren't, essentially getting blown out at halftime, it would have looked a lot better. This game could have went in the Jets' favor, but you know what? They made the mistakes. They had a couple bad calls, and unfortunately, in that first half, it was just so anemic that they're down all these scores. So now it's kind of like you're in automatic throw mode in the entire second half. But I think when we start looking at the best teams in the AFC. Start specifically looking at wildcard teams in the hunt, the Jets are in. The Jets are this team. I was impressed, man. I was really, really impressed because, yes, the Jets have had some awesome wins, on the road in Denver, in Green Bay, in Pittsburgh, but now as the season has kind of played out a little bit, those teams aren't really, all what a lot of people thought they were going to be. I mean, I was thinking Denver was 11-win team, Green Bay possibly 10, 11, 12-win team. Pittsburgh I thought was going to be right in the thick of the playoff race, but it turns out those teams aren't really all that. But the Minnesota Vikings, again, are for real. This is, to me, a top 2, top 3 team in the NFC. So I think really where the Jets fell short, coaching for sure, especially early on. I mean, I felt like a couple decisions made by the staff was just, they were head scratchers. I mean, Robert Saleh challenging that play when Minnesota was already in striking distance. I felt like that was just like, you just don't challenge that there. It was just so obvious to me, at least, from my perspective watching on TV. I know he doesn't have that perspective, but it's just like, I really didn't like that challenge. I felt like the Jets came out throwing way too much. I feel like, I think it was Mike White had 16 passing attempts with 5 minutes left in the first quarter. So they were just opening it up early on with just little dump offs and checkdowns. But I think you got to stay true to the running game and keep the clock going, because it wasn't like Mike White was completing all of those passes. There were a bunch of incompletions, which then stops the clock. It stops the rhythm. It stops everybody from getting in sync. And it's just, you can't, it's so much harder to sustain long drives. Minnesota had a couple of really tedious drives, helped out with some penalties, I will say, but they had some, full field drives that were just, I mean, I was watching at home thinking, like, please get off the field. Can we get a stop? Come on. They were converting third down after third down, getting a flag here. Cousins would make a nice throw there. Dalvin Cook would, snap off a good run there. It's like, we cannot get off the field, and it just beats down the defense. I felt like, again, in the first half, the Jets didn't really have many drives like that to really wear down Minnesota's defense, which at times has been a pretty big weak spot, especially defending against the pass. So I felt like it was just a little too obvious that the Jets came out and were just throwing the football left and right, pretty much all over the place. Another poor coaching decision, in my opinion, was when the Jets went for it, 4th and short around the midfield mark. The score was 17-3. The Vikings had all 3 timeouts, and on top of that, the Vikings were going to be getting the ball in the second half. I get and I appreciate the aggressive mindset from Saleh, like, hey, you know what? Just because it's 4th down doesn't mean it's an automatic punt. We're in a little bit of in no man's land, if you will. But I think it's such an obvious situation to punt there. Of course, hindsight is 2020, and it didn't really kill the Jets that much because, yes, the Vikings, the Jets didn't get on a 4th down. The Vikings go down the field and get a field goal. The Jets end up getting another field goal before the half. But, in the moment, to me, on the road in a hostile environment, going up against a 9-win football team, down 2 possessions, you don't want to take the risk. You don't want to roll the dice of coming up short and now putting your team at risk to go down 3 possessions. I really just did not like that decision there. But you know what? The Jets have a lot to build off of. You can rewatch this game if you're Mike White. You can rewatch this game if you're a bunch of different players and say, we did a lot of really, really good things. If we didn't make some of these mistakes, if we didn't get flagged here and there, this very well could have been a win. And I think that's really encouraging for the team moving forward, going to Buffalo next week in a massive matchup. It's good that the Jets came out like this. There wasn't I was actually getting a couple messages before the game from some Jets fans and are like, hey, hopefully it's not like a hangover game last week against the banged up 3-win Bears. Now we're going to be playing a legit playoff team. Hopefully we don't look completely outclassed. And that wasn't the case. It was not the case. So again, we have some things to build off of. Just clean up a couple mistakes and this team should win a handful of games down the stretch, thus propelling them to the playoffs. Quickly though, how about Garrett Wilson? 8 catches, over 160 receiving yards. Bam Knight had 90 rushing yards, making a huge impact on the ground, had a couple of snags through the air. Greg Zuerlein hitting a franchise record 60-yard field goal. Totally cool. Zuerlein has been, he's been a rock on special teams all year, and that's been a weak spot for the New York Jets the past couple of seasons, really since Jason Myers. So to really wrap things up here, it sucks to lose. for sure, especially with the Buffalo Bills winning, Thursday night against the Pats. But then again, the Patriots did lose. So if the season were to end today, depending on what's going on with the Chargers later on tonight, the Jets could still be in the playoff picture and have a massive game next week against the Buffalo Bills. So I'll leave it there. There's a ton to build off of. Some of the young players really shined. Thanks so much for watching. Let me know your thoughts down below in the comment section. And as always, go Jets.